Amen. In the last presentation, we're looking at the nature of man. We've seen that the nature of man is threefold. We've seen that man is spiritual, essentially not physical. Our physical bodies are the house in which we live. We've seen that if you start manipulating or distorting or warping the human body by DNA mutation, you begin to affect the spiritual. But we know that's not the only cause of damage to ourselves or the spiritual being. It's not just some passive thing that can come upon us. We can proactively do something that damages or harms us. As an example, the deliberate refusal of truth will affect your spirituality. You can all understand and attest to that. And that's not really anything to do with our five senses and what we would eat or drink or what we would watch. So we have to deal with both of those issues. We then saw that this threefold nature was described as a physical, mental and moral. We also then saw that a human being can be divided into two parts. Let me put this the other way around, because it says the higher and lower powers, but let's put it in the order that it's here in this column. The lower and the higher powers. I then began to explain that even though the statement said that it's the physical, it's not really our physical members or our body that she's referring to. It's actually the lower powers or passions, which are lust, appetite, anger, all those emotions that we feel. They have their seat in the physical body, which is why often it's used as this word physical, or what Paul would say is flesh. Sounds like it's the human body, but he's not referring to the human body. And the way he explains that in the passages that we read. We then read some statements that spoke about the higher and the lower powers, and that God, Jesus Christ, would not share the throne with someone else. He would have an undivided throne. So that's what this symbol is here. You've got a throne, and these lower powers have their seat in the physical body, but they're often represented as the heart, where all of our emotions and our feelings are seated. We've got a symbol of the heart, but it's not the physical heart. We need to understand that this is all a parable. It's not literal. It's not a literal heart, it's just a symbol. So Christ here will not share this throne with this heart. We read that the lower powers must come into submission to the higher powers. So they must submit to these higher powers. We then read that in this example, it's not the only example, but in that context, he said if you eat meat, you end up becoming animalized to such a degree that this lower power then begins to control the higher powers. So we saw that there's the lower powers controlling the higher powers. We also saw that the lower powers are required to be subjugated or subject to the higher powers. We also saw that this model of a throne, a heart and Christ is the very same model that's portrayed in Romans chapter 7. In Romans chapter 7, it's not a throne or a heart or a cross. It's the context of marriage. And in that context, the throne is the woman, us. The heart is the husband that we're married to, or what we might call the old man of sin. And Christ will not marry you while you're still married to this man, to your sins, or to express it in the context that we're looking at, while the lower powers have the ascendancy over the higher powers. Christ will not marry you. They need to be subjugated to the higher powers. You understood that? Once that happens and the old man of sin dies, all the lower powers are now subject to the higher powers. The heart is taken off the throne. Christ can sit there and everything is good. That's a summary of what we spoke about last time. Is everybody okay with that? Computers okay, let's go back to the first passage, the first one that we read. This was Adventist Home 127, paragraph 2. Remember we read this statement. It says, the flesh of itself cannot act contrary to the will of God. Yeah? So the flesh itself doesn't have the ability to actually act or do things contrary to the will of God. But did we not read a moment ago that these lower powers, if you distort them enough, if you allow them to take control of the situation, they will have the ascendancy or take control over the higher powers, and then Christ will no longer take residence in you. He'll just back away, and you'll only have one person on the throne, which is the heart, the lower powers. We read that, yes? But it says that the flesh of itself cannot act contrary to God's will. What is God's will? That He has the seed in its entirety. He has full control of human beings. Isn't that God's will for us? He wants us to prosper and be in good health. So how can this heart take control of the higher powers, share the throne with Christ at one level, but at another level it cannot act contrary to the will of God? It doesn't have the ability to act or to put into effect what it wants to do. Do we understand? That's where we finished last time. Remember that? So just to summarise what I'm saying, we're reading from Adventist Home 127, paragraph 2. The flesh itself cannot act contrary to the will of God. I'm saying this. My understanding of that passage means that the lower passions cannot actually do anything that they want to do. They just sit there crying for something to change. They're crying for your fingers to reach out and take the biscuit and put it into your mouth. But they have no ability to do what? They have no ability to get your fingers to do the work. Because you know it's not God's will that your fingers do that work. Yes? And so they have no ability to act contrary to God's will. So they can't make your fingers do what they want your fingers to do. They have no ability. When I say they, let me say it. The lower power has no ability to make your eyes look at something that you shouldn't look at. But we read, they take control over the higher powers. So let's try and address how we're going to sort that issue out. Here we've seen threefold, and here we've seen twofold. Lower and higher and threefold, so you've got 2 and 3. So what we're going to see is that the higher powers are divided into 2 sections. So you've got the lower powers, the higher power 1 and the higher power 2. Or as it's described here, the physical, mental and moral. So we'll put L, H1 and H2. So let's read some Spirit Prophecy quotes that are going to help us to understand this issue. Did everybody understand what I just did? There's many statements on this, and what I would suggest that you go to, I don't normally recommend compilations, but this particular one is a really good compilation. I think it's in a 2 or 3 volume series, and it's called Mind, Character, Personality. I'm sure you've all heard of it. It's a really good compilation in my opinion. And all I'm going to say is volume 2, Mind, Character,
and Personality.
Oh yeah. Mind, Character and Personality, Volume 2, and if you just go to chapter 76, begins page 685. But before we do that, we're going to read from Education. Education 289, paragraph 1. Education, page 289, paragraph 1. Every child should understand the true force of the will. He should be led to see how great is the responsibility involved in this gift. The will is the governing power in the nature of man. So we'll stop there. We're speaking about the nature of man. It's threefold. Physical, mental and moral. We've then seen that it's in 2 parts, lower and higher. And we're going to see that the higher powers are divided into 2 sections, H1 and H2. In this language it's mental and moral. We've already seen that the lower power cannot of itself take control of the situation of a human being. It cannot dictate what you will and what you will not do. But it's God's will that the lower power are in subjection to the higher powers. But if you don't take control of your situation, of yourself, of your environment, if you don't remain under control, then these lower powers will take the ascendancy and be in control. But just the fact that they're in control doesn't mean that they have the ability to do anything. Hence you have H1 and H2. So we've read here that the will is the governing power in the nature of man. Now to govern means to rule. We could say to rule supremely. That's where we get the idea of government or governance. It's the power that rules supremely. So what we're going to see now is that these higher powers in these 2 sections, and this moral is another word for will. So before we move on with the will, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on the mental. What I'm going to say to mental is, without giving any Spirit Prophecy quotes, this is your ability to gather information, to understand information, to have knowledge, and also to retrieve information or memory. So, the way I like to, for myself, to conceptualize mind is by a library. So if you think about a library, on the wall is a whole shelf of books, all contain information and knowledge. But you go into the library and all those books aren't any good to you because you don't know how to retrieve the information. So who do you need the help of? The librarian. So in my mind, I conceptualize the mental powers of the mind as being a librarian and a library. A librarian is able to tell you and direct you where to go to get the information. You can read the information and you can work out what is what. So all of this is facts and figures, is information. This is all your emotions. And then you have the will. We're going to focus a little bit on the will, because the will is a misunderstood part of the nature of a human being. Every child should understand the true force of the will. So the reason she makes this emphasis is that I'm suggesting, if you read not only this passage, but many, many times that she speaks about the will, it's the most misunderstood part of the nature of a human being. And the reason for that is when you stretched out for that biscuit and you ate it, and someone says, "Why did you do that?" What would you say? Couldn't help it. I don't know, it just happened. Or we got into an argument now, and I suddenly really quickly got aggressive. You can't believe that. I get aggressive. And you say, "Why did you do that?" I said, "Oh, I got provoked. It wasn't my fault, it just happened." Or, "It was an accident. Didn't mean to do it." This is why Ellen White, I think, says every child from childhood should be taught this one thing. They should understand what will is. So that by the time we're not adults, we're not still making the same excuse over and over again that it wasn't my fault. It was someone else's fault. You need to understand the true force of the will. The will is the governing power in the nature of man. The power of decision or choice. So will is choice or decision. Is there any time in your life that you never make a decision? No. So if I said to you, "You're here, and we're going to split the room into two groups. One group over here and one group over there." I said to my brother, "Choose which group you want to go into, this one or this one." And he stood there. Has he made a choice? Yes, everybody can see he made a choice. He made a choice not to do anything. Not doing anything is making a choice. So whatever circumstance you find yourself in, whatever situation, moment by moment, throughout the day, we're faced with thousands of decisions. Yes?
Yes.
And at each one of those waymarks, at each one of those points, we have to decide what we're going to do. And who's going to make that decision? It's the will. Is it the lower powers that are going to make the decision? They can't do, because they have no ability to go contrary to the will of Christ. Can the librarian living in the library, can all those books do it for you? They can't. It's the will which is the governing power in a human being. That's what makes the decision. And it controls everything. But what have we been tricked or deceived into? Because she says, you need to understand this. And we all do it. We all make excuses. Why did you swear? Why did you say it that way? Why did you get angry? People say, the words just came out of my mouth. Don't we say that? They just came out. If they just came out of the mouth, and your mouth is your members or your body, what has its seat in the body? The lower powers. So you're saying that lower power made my mouth speak contrary to the will of God. And we know that can't be. So what did your lower powers, who have their seat in the body, have to do first? Before your mouth opened? They have to skip across here and say, Will, can you make the mouth open and tell, or make the mouth say what I want it to say? So I want it to say something rude. I want it to be disrespectful because I'm not feeling happy. And the will say, you always bully me. I always feel pressurized by you. And the will, being so weak, says, okay, I'll do it. And the librarian reminds you, the will, if you hadn't eaten the meat last week and yesterday and this morning, you wouldn't have been so animalized, and these lower powers wouldn't have had so much power over you and got all this muscle to beat you up. It would have been weakened and had atrophy, which means your muscles just deteriorate for lack of use. But you keep on feeding this lower power, and you're going to get into trouble because it will take the ascendancy. It will bully you. Now, can a bully force you to do anything? Can't force you to do anything. You do it because you cower before it. In fact, most bullies are actually weak. So it doesn't have any ability, it has to go through the will. The will is the governing power in the nature of man, the power of decision or choice. Every human being possessed of reason has power to choose the right. Every experience of life, in every experience of life, God's word to us is, choose you this day whom you will serve. So here you are, you've grown up in the world and you didn't have a good library. So the library that you visited said pork is really good for you. It's a healthy meat, low in cholesterol, low fat, good protein profile. So that's your knowledge base. So what are you going to keep on doing? You're going to keep on eating meat. So it says, every human being possessed of reason has power to choose the right. In every experience of life, God's word to us is, choose you this day whom you will serve. Without the correct information, you don't have any hope of actually doing what's right. So you have to have information to base everything on. If you don't have the information base, what you think is right could actually end up being wrong. Can we understand that? We're going to think about this later on when we talk about the sealing. Because what is the sealing? It's a settling into the truth, both intellectually, here, and spiritually, which is here. It's got to be settled both ways, intellectually and spiritually. So first of all, you need to have the truth. If you don't have the truth, you can't do anything. You can't make the right decisions. So, this will is the governor. And the governor is the boss, it's the ruler, yes? So is this will part of you, or is it part of God? Is it a gift that He's given to you? When you are... It is? Are your fingers a gift that God gave to you? Or are they you? So, is your appetite a gift that He gave to you, or is it you? I would suggest it's not a gift. I would suggest it's you. When He put you together, He said, I put all these pieces here, and now it's you. Like you've got a child. So the child is over there and you're here as a parent, and what do you do when it's the birthday? You give them something that's existential, that's not theirs, that's not them, don't you? That's a gift. A gift is something that you don't possess by nature. You understand that?
Yes.
What is sin? The wages of sin is death. Yeah? So, let me put it the other way. When you die, why do you die? Was it a gift that you got from somebody? No. It's your wages. You earned it. It was your right to receive that. So wages are not gifts, are they? Yeah? A gift is something that's not part of you, that you don't deserve, that someone says, I'll just give this to you as a favour. But I don't think when God created the human being that He did us any favours, because we weren't even in existence. He said, I'll create this human being. And when He creates anything, by definition, what does He have to create it in? His own image. Is a flower created in the image of God? Is a flower created in the image of God? Are the stars and the sun and the moon, the heavens, are they created in the image of God? Then how can they portray or reflect His glory if they're not? How can there be a representation of who God is? Because they said they are a representation of His glory. How can they reflect His glory if they're not created in His image in some shape or form? They must be. Everything that God creates must be created in His image. But not everything is created to the same degree. The ultimate created thing, whether inanimate, non-living, or animate, living, is what? Man. Human beings. So man was created a little lower than the angels. Is that right? So who's the ultimate being? Angels or man? Still man, because man needs to grow up. It was God's will that when He created man, He wouldn't create him in a finished, completed state. Yes? Did He create him perfect?
Yes.
Is he fully mature? No. Has he reached his ultimate purpose of existence? No. We know this was the contention between Lucifer and the Godhead, don't we? At least one of the issues. Because when God was going to create man, what was Lucifer's job? Because he wasn't allowed to be part of the creation, was he? And he got upset with that. Then what was his job? Because he's the top ranking being that's ever been created. He's now having to be a tutor or a teacher for who? For mankind. So he's going to teach this young person to be what he needs to be. He's going to teach him and he's going to grow up. And when this man grows up to maturity, who's going to be the boss?
The man.
The man.
Yes.
Not the governor. Not
Yes.
Lucifer.
Not Lucifer.
And that really upset him. That really upset Lucifer. And he upsets us as well. Because if we work all day long in the field and we only get 1 penny and someone jumps the queue, we get upset, don't we? So Lucifer had big problems with that. So what I want us to see is that man is the ultimate creation in the image of God. And not only man, you know, animals are really good as well. Because only on this earth are we able to have children and offspring and reproduce ourselves. No other beings are able to do that. So even animals that we have here on the earth are a really good representation or an image of God. So I want to suggest that everything is an image of God. By definition, it has to be that way. Some of them are good representations, and some of them, I can't say not so good, but they're weaker representations, like a flower. We have a problem because we have thorns and thistles and all tares and problems which Satan begins to introduce through whatever means he's able to do that. So we're not going to get into that. So the question I want to ask, do we have will independent of God?
Yes.
We have to. Yes? Because God created you with a choice to do what you want. We call it free will, which means by definition it has to be independent of God. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
But what's the problem with our will? The problem with our will is nothing. There's actually no problem with the will. It functions perfectly well because you use it hundreds of times, if not thousands of times a day. You're always choosing something. The problem with a human being is not the will, it's what? It's this. It's when this starts bullying the will to make it do what it wants. So, what you need to do, if your child is being bullied, is to, however you express this, you need to say, you need to stand up for yourself. I'm not saying to fight back, however way the dynamics of that work, but you need to tell your child to stand up for itself and not accept the bullying. And that's what we need to do. We need to understand what the will is, how it operates, and its true function. And when we understand that, then the will can end up doing its job function, which is to make proper choices and not be bullied. Do we see that? So the will is yours to do what you want with. Yes? We spoke about meat eating. I presume nobody here eats pork. We're all Adventists. So you stopped eating pork, or maybe you never ate pork if you were born Adventist, I don't know. Do you not eat pork in your own strength, in your own will, or in God's strength and God's will? So my brother does it in God's strength. Yeah? Everybody agree with that? Okay, so the reason you don't eat pork is because God gives you strength not to eat the pork. Yeah? Okay, some people disagree with that. Now, I don't know how many Adventists there are in the world, maybe 16 to 18 million, but I guarantee you there's more vegans than Adventists. Many more vegans than Adventists. And the vast majority of them don't worship either God or the true God. So they worship Satan in some shape or form. And they don't eat pork. So whose strength do they do not eat pork in? Their own strength or God's strength? So they can manage not to eat pork in their own strength, but my brother can't. Why can't we just say we're not going to eat pork? And just stop? We can, can't we? We have enough power, it's the governing power. You just say to your arm, don't pick the pork up, pick an apple instead. It's not difficult if you have the right information, like a vegan does. Yeah? If you know that pork is full of worms and you're going to get into problems, you just don't do it. It's common sense. And you can do that all in your own strength. Yes? Agree with that? Can you stop, talking to the men, perhaps, maybe the women, I don't know. Can you stop committing adultery in your own strength? Or do you need God's strength to not commit adultery?
I think it's
You have to speak loud if you're going to have a dialogue, you have to speak loud, otherwise I can't dialogue.
I think what happens is, because of what's in the library, we now know that God does not want this. And because of that now, we have the power to make a choice to say we don't want to eat pork, because we know pork is not right.
Okay, I want to say, you had power before, but you didn't have information before.
That's why I was eating pork.
So if once you get the information, you can either get it from the Bible, or you can get it from Google. Either place, Google explain why, the Bible won't. Because the Bible doesn't explain many things, it just says, this is the best way. So, I'm just saying this is information. You can get the information wherever you want to. Some is good and some is bad information. The Bible only contains good information. So if you go to Google, you're running the risk of getting some bad or good. Most of it's probably pretty good. And then you have a decision to make based upon information or based upon how you feel. But you have the power without the information.
May you understand it. When we're talking of the physiology said, when you develop a bad habit, for you to kill that habit, it needs the miracle from God to help you overcome that sin. What of this one we are talking of now?
Okay, so if you think to overcome a habit you need a miracle of God, then you go to the world and you'd have to show that no one in the world, no atheist, can ever stop smoking, which is one of the most addictive sins there are. But there are millions of people in their own strength, in their own will, overcome the habit. Once you detoxify and the nicotine and the other chemicals get out of your body and they stop having the pull, because the lower powers have their seat in the body, once those chemicals stop having the pull and this starts becoming quieter, it doesn't have the control over the will, and you can begin to stop smoking in your own strength. Millions of people have successfully done that. Habit is an important part of God's armoury in helping human beings, but it's not the full and total solution. The reason you know that is you can have a habit of never doing sin for 80 years, and then you sin. So how do you explain a habitual life of perfection, then you sin right at the end? We're of course talking about Moses. When he gets pushed hard enough, when he's had enough, he says, okay, now I'm just going to vent. I'm going to let loose my anger and I'm going to strike the rock. And he hasn't got a habit of doing that. So habit is an important thing for us to grapple with. And it's an important tool in our armoury. But it's not the full solution to the gospel message. The reason it's not a full solution to the gospel message is because habit can be entered into over a time period, and it can be taken out of over time, because habit has connected with it time. But we know God is a God of creation, and when He speaks, things happen. So I understand about habit, but it's not in opposition to anything that I've spoken so far. I don't believe. My brother.
I was going to say, what happens then to, I can do all things through God who strengthens me.
Okay, so we're going to deal with verses like that, what that means. Because I'm saying, according to this model, you can do all things in your own will.
Yeah. So why would you need God?
So we're going to try and understand what our part is and what God's part is.
Yeah.
So at the back.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the miracle, we need to understand. I'm trying to link what you are saying and what Sister Doreen said in the morning, because to me, it's one and the same thing. So I'm trying to understand that the miracle part of it is the information that Christ gives you based on on the gospel that this is what is right and this is what is wrong, and then you still have to exercise your will to make that choice to say, I'm going to choose that which is right. And when you choose that which is right, then the bad habits begin to die off.
Okay. I think character is the harvest.
So character is?
Character is the harvest of life. So a strong character, the spirit of prophecy, is constituted by two things, which is willpower and self-control. So God will not send a compelling power unless we involve ourselves. Then God will help. So to surrender, it's my choice. We are free moral agents.
Let's go to the next statement. Where if you're in my character and personality, I'm just going through from 685 onward. This is paragraph 2. The tempted one needs to understand the true force of the will. So in paragraph 2, subtitled, Everything Depends Upon the Right Action. The tempted one needs to understand the true force of the will. This is the governing power in the nature of man, the power of decision or choice. Everything depends upon the right action of the will. Desires for goodness and purity are right as far as they go. But if we stop here, they avail nothing. Many will go down to ruin while hoping and desiring to overcome their evil propensities. Where would these evil propensities be? Over here. These evil propensities. We can desire to put them out of our lives. We can wish and hope for. But if they don't do something about it, if they don't choose, if they don't yield their will to God's will, then nothing will happen. So I want us to pick up this one sentence. They do not yield the will to God. What I understand that phrase to be, I'm not sure how you understand it, is when it says yield the will to God, what I understand that to mean is the following. They're not going to go to this, they're going to go to this. They're going to go to information, what God said that they should or should not do. They're going to let the mind dictate and control what they should do and what they should not do. They do not yield the will to God or God's instruction or God's requirements. And God's instruction and His requirements are all going to be housed here in the library. So God says, you don't eat more than twice a day. So what you need to do is, first of all, have the information in your library, don't you? If it's not there, you don't know what He wants. And then you have to yield to that information. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay? So you need to know that the will is the governing power, and it needs to go to the information that God has given you, the right information. They do not choose to serve Him. Rather, they choose to serve the lower powers, not because they even want to. The will doesn't want to, it's bullied into submission. Next paragraph. Your will is the spring of all your actions. What is a spring? You think about water. There's ground and there's a little hole there and the water gushes out. It's the beginning of something, isn't it? Isn't that what a spring is? Yeah? Or if you think about a literal spring, it's the launching pad. Your will is the spring of all your actions. Every action that you do begins where? In the will. Who controls the will? You. Because you are the will. The will is you. It's the governing power. Okay? So I don't know here, who can run 5K? 2K? 1K? So no one here can run a marathon. Yeah? No one, 5 kilometers, sorry. Who could run 5 kilometers, not speed. Who can run a marathon? Oh good, a couple of people can run a marathon. Now, if you look at the science about marathon running, and I will say to the brother over here, I said, could you run a marathon? He said, I could never do that. Too old, too tired, you know, I'm not trained, this never happen. If you go under the proper tutoring or stewardship of a proper trainer, within 6 months, easily within 6 months, you could run a marathon. They've proven this time and time again. Unless you've got some serious illness, you know, if you've got some serious disease, then you couldn't. But if you're overweight, not well, just a normal person, you can run a marathon. Every human being can do that. And if you ask any marathon runner, they say it's all where? It's all in the mind. What they really mean is not in the mind, they mean it's in the will. It's not in your legs, it's not in your muscles, it's all in your will. It's all about willpower. So, when you think about what you're capable of doing and what you're not, I want us to see that it's all about will. We're going to read now from Steps to Christ.
The previous book.
Sorry?
The previous book. You were reading.
That was all My Character and Personality, Volume 2. We read 3 paragraphs.
Okay.
All sequentially. This is 47.1. Steps to Christ 47.1. Steps to Christ is a good book. Especially if you want to understand the reform line, in my opinion. It explains an awful lot about how our reform line works. 47.1. Many are inquiring, how am I to make the surrender of myself to God? You desire to give yourself to Him. Remember we read about the desire? All these people, you are desiring to do right. But you don't. You don't do right. Why don't you do right? What's your problem? Whose fault is it?
Mine.
Is it your fault? What did we read earlier? It said, you need to teach children what?
The true force.
True force of the will. Whose fault it is if the child doesn't know anything? Parents. You desire to give yourself to Him, but you are weak in moral power, in slavery to doubt, and controlled by the habits of your life of sin. Are you really controlled by the habits of your life and sin? In real life, are you really controlled by your habits? Can't be. Your habits are centered where? Here. And it says your lower power cannot go contrary to the will of God. It can't take control. It could trump or go over your mental powers, but it cannot control your will. Your will is the governing force in a human being. Yeah? We've already established that. So you can't be controlled by the habits of your life of sin. But this person, we call it a person, is a bully. And the bully has deceived you, tricked you into being a slave. And in this one sentence, it talks about slavery, doesn't it? Because you're a slave. And who's your master's... So what's your master's name? Can we see that? Doubt. So your slave master, his name is doubt. What does doubt mean? You doubt something.
Opposite of faith.
Sorry? You don't trust it completely? You don't know what doubt means?
To waver.
You waver. Normally by this stage, at a process school, people would get their phones out, get their dictionaries and give me a... you know, from Webster's Dictionary, because you've all got it on your computers, I'm sure, on your phone. You give me a definition of what doubt is. Doubt is unbelief. You don't believe in something. So, many are inquiring, how am I to make the surrender of myself to God? Isn't that what we want to do? How, from what we know so far, how do you make your surrender to God? What do you have to do? You just get your will and say, I'm going to get my will and I'm going to make sure it follows the mind, which has got all the correct information. Yes? So that's what they're requiring. You desire to give yourself to him, but you are weak in moral power. Where's moral power, by the way? Moral will. It says you're weak because you're being bullied. And not only bullied, but you're in slavery to doubt. You no longer believe that this is the governing power in a human being. What do you believe the governing power in a human being is? The lower powers. So it's all about deception and trickery. And whose fault is that? That you're being tricked and deceived?
My fault.
Your parents. Has to be your parents. Because when you were a child, they didn't train you up in the way you should go. They didn't teach you about the true force of the will. Now, I don't want to blame your parents too much because I don't know your family background. So rather than that, I'll blame your pastors. Now, I don't know how long you've been an Adventist. Maybe you came straight into the movement. So then I can't blame your pastors. I have to blame the teachers. Because the teachers didn't teach you it. You've got to be taught something. If I said to you, what's the most important reform line, waymark in the reform line, and you didn't know, who do I blame? If I knew someone, so if I knew you well enough and I knew no one's ever taught you that before, I'd have to blame myself, wouldn't I? So you need to know who to cast blame on. And in this passage here, we're going to see that the blame is not upon the person, because the person is in ignorance, and most of us are in ignorance. We're ignorant to our own situation. And Satan has taken advantage of that. Immoral power enslaved me to doubt and controlled by the habits of your life of sin. Your promises and resolutions are like ropes of sand. To me, that's one of the most beautiful word pictures in the spirit of prophecy. We're surrounded by sand here in this encampment. When you go out, grab a handful of sand, put it in your fist, and let it spill out. And if you do it well, it will look like a rope or a string that's dangling down. Yeah? And you try grabbing hold of it, and you end up having nothing. You have a few grains of sand in your hand. That's what she's saying. It's a really beautiful word picture, I think. Your promises and resolutions are like ropes of sand. What is a promise and resolution? Who's doing all of those promises and resolutions? We will, because I'm going to do it. I'm going to stop shouting. I'm going to stop eating that thing that I shouldn't do. I'm going to start getting up early and start studying. I'm going to make effort, but they're like ropes of sand. Why? Is it because the will doesn't have the ability to do that? No. It's because you've been deceived by your slave master, doubt. He keeps on telling you over here, you can't do that. It just doesn't work. And you end up giving up after a while. You cannot control your thoughts, your impulses, your affections. What's she talking about now? You cannot control your thoughts, your impulses, your affections. Where are all those? Right over here. You can't control them. Can you control them?
Yes.
No way. You cannot control your thoughts, your impulses, your affections. They just come thick and fast. You try, if we didn't have lunch now, you wait till 10 o'clock, you cannot control that your belly starts rumbling and you start feeling hungry. You can't control that. It's built into your system. I always do it with the men, I feel with the women. If you're a young woman and you see a handsome man over there and you're looking to get married, you can't control those emotions that well up inside you. You might not act upon them, you might not do anything with them, you might turn away and forget about them, but in that moment, those emotions and those feelings, you can't. They just spring up. I'm not saying you should do anything with them, and we're not required to, but it's part of these lower powers. They're just built into us. You can't control them. Then we move on. The knowledge of your broken promises and forfeited pledges weakens your confidence in your own sincerity and causes you to feel that God cannot accept you. And this is the condition of someone who is in an old covenant relationship. During the old covenant, they're a tear, they're a foolish virgin, they're a false prophet, whatever name you want to call them, they're vile, they're wicked. Call them whatever you want to. You can call them heathen if you like. These people are in this condition, and what's unique about tares and foolish virgins is they have all the information, and it's all here. They're under the old covenant. We got to the semicolon. Then she says this, but you need not despair. You need not despair. What you need to understand is the true force of the will. And if you memorize things, memorize this. What you need to understand, understanding is here. Put it into your memory bank, into your mind, that you need to understand what the true force of the will is. The will, this is the governing power in the nature of man, the power of decision or choice. If you understand that, your life can be transformed. Still lost, not saved, but your life will be transformed. You can get up on time, you can eat right, you can dress right, you can stop shouting, swearing. You can live a perfectly nice life if you just followed that counsel and you understood the true force of the will. But that is not salvation. Everything depends upon the right action of the will. The power of choice God has given to men. He will not make the decision for you. It is theirs to exercise. Full stop. What we need to understand is the true force of the will. God gave it to you. It's not a gift that He gave to you. It's part of your nature. When He gave it to you, it's yours to exercise, to do what is right and what is wrong. You come to prophecy schools to fill your library up with information. Then you need to act upon it. And many of us don't act upon it because we're in slavery to doubt. We don't understand the true force of the will. I would express it this way: we make excuses for our behaviour. Unlawful excuses. But I say that not with any casting blame on anybody, because most people don't understand what the nature of man is. And this is just a simple introduction. So from this simple introduction, I'm hoping that you can understand how your being works, how you operate. And once you do that, then you can begin to confront yourself. And when you do something wrong, then you can realise why you did wrong. Why did you do wrong? You chose to do wrong. Now, I'm pretty certain in a congregation this size, a number of people here do not believe that, even after 2 hours of presentation on this subject. I'm confident, because this is so embedded in this false view of the nature of man. It's so embedded in us that I know there are people in this room who don't actually agree with what I'm teaching. I know it. We've got to full stop. Then she says this. So, everything of the will, you're exercising it, you're doing it. You agree? Then she says this. Now she's going to contrast. You cannot change your heart. That's this. You cannot change the heart. But you can sort out the will. The will can take its rightful place. And when the heart says, look at a woman, your will says to your eyes, do what?
Turn away.
Shut. Turn away. Your will has enough power to do that, but it doesn't have the power to take your heart to say, stop this woman stuff. Stop desiring food that you shouldn't eat. You can't do that. You cannot change your heart. You cannot of yourself gives to God its affections. Agree with that? But you can do what? You can choose to serve Him. If you ask most soldiers, are they happy or unhappy? Most of them are unhappy people because they're forced to dress a certain way. They're forced to eat a certain way. They're forced to get up at a certain time of day. Actually, that sounds like Adventism, doesn't it? Most Adventists aren't happy. Why aren't we happy? Because our hearts have not been changed, but we do what? We choose to serve Him. We choose to serve a God whom we don't like. Why don't we like Him? Do we want to like Him? Who wouldn't want to like God? Why don't we like Him? Because we can't change our heart. Can we see that? You can choose to obey Him, but you can't choose to love Him. Can we see that? You can't choose to love Him. You can give Him your will. He will then work in you to will and to do according to His good pleasure. What's His good pleasure? All the information here. Yeah? He'll do more than that. Thus your whole nature will be brought under the control of the Spirit of Christ. Your affections will be centered upon Him. Your thoughts will be in harmony with Him. So, we've run out of time again. So let's have a summary of what we're saying. The nature of man is threefold. It comprises of two portions, lower and higher power. The higher power is in two sections. We can describe it as physical, mental and moral. I've already alluded to this fact that this is the heart. And the mental would be the mind. So we've got heart and mind, which is terminology that I think we're familiar with. Heart and mind, and then you have will. The will is the governing force in the power of a human being. It's not a gift, it's yours by creation. There's some complexities in this thing, because when Adam fell, his will went into captivity to Satan. But then, God, because of the gospel, gave Adam and Eve their wills back. Genesis 3:15. The gospel message. They were given the ability to choose once again, after it was taken from them. We have the ability to make any decision we want to make, but we've been deceived because we're in slavery to doubt that we think we can't. But what we need to understand is the true force of the will. We can choose to serve God, but we can't give Him our affections, our love, our emotions, because we can't change the heart. So, we've all heard about the tension between faith and works. Yeah? We will understand about our part and God's part. I think one of my brothers already alluded to this before. What this model is teaching is that our part is to do right. Yes? In whose strength? In your own strength. You can do right in your own strength. The problem is that you can't love God. So let's put it this way. Yes. Do good. That's old covenant. Were the scribes and Pharisees, particularly the Pharisees, did they do good?
Yes.
Yeah? They kept all the law perfectly. All correct. So that's the old covenant. How would we describe the new covenant? Because the old covenant is to do good. So how would you describe the new covenant? Love to do good. So the difference between the old and the new covenant, between the tare and the wheat, between the wicked and the wise, between the vile and the precious, is that one group does good and the other loves to do good. And this condition here of the old covenant, we read in Galatians chapter 4 from verse 21 onward, is the condition of the church. And when some of those churchgoers, Adventists, come into this movement in this condition, what does Paul call them? He has two nice words. He makes one of them up. It's not even a real word.
Can you repeat?
Okay, so you've got these people from the church, Adventists, who are under Old Covenant. We've proven that, yes? Jerusalem, that is now on earth. GC headquarters. This is Old Covenant, all Adventists. Then there's this gospel message, reform line, call to repentance, to come out and stand apart and come under the new covenant, which is the reform line, which is the message that we have to get a church ready and prepared to chop down the hills and fill in the valleys. The message that prepares the way before the message of the covenant comes. So he's going to give you the new covenant, but there are some people who don't enter into the new covenant, but they come into the message, because an enemy does this. The gospel brings in both good and bad. Yes? And now I've forgotten my question. So they come in, and they're in the same condition as they were in the church, and there wasn't any change in the old covenant. What does Paul call these people who come into the movement, not the ones who stay in the church? He has two nice names for them. Concision. And one of his, he makes up, what's that?
Concision.
Concision. It's not even a real word, it's a really nice word. And the other one he says is that they're dogs. So I want to say, for all you tares, you're dogs. It's not pleasant. But that's what Paul calls them. And we want to understand why Paul calls them the concision. What does concision sound like? Sounds like circumcision, doesn't it? It's a play on words. So in our next presentation, we're going to see if we can get to that issue. So I'm pretty much done with the nature of man. I want us to understand the true force of the will. So from this moment onward, it's Sunday today? Got 6 days left. In the 6 days we're here at this holy convocation, we break camp on Sunday morning. Make a commitment that you're going to start exercising the true force of the will. We were speaking last night about the vicissitudes of life, the trials and tribulations that we have in life. Ellen White has a really nice statement. She says, these are all of your troubles in life. 100% of them. She says, you can get rid of half of them. Who would want to get rid of half of their problems? Everybody would, wouldn't they? Yeah? It's easy to get rid of half of your problems in life. All you have to do is speak nicely to one another and treat each other with kindness. And that will get rid of all of these half of the problems. And then the other half, you've just got the world and your job and society and Satan, which you can't control. These things that come at you. Half of them are all manufactured by ourselves. So we could be twice as happy from this moment onwards as we've ever been if we just follow the rules that we've laid out. So as we pray now, I want us to seriously make a commitment that we're going to take on board this truth that we're going to commit to exercising our will according to what we know is right. And all of us here are signed up members of this movement. And we know what's right and we know what's wrong. We will understand the 10 Commandments. We will understand the Golden Rule and how to treat one another. And I'm not saying enjoy doing it. I don't even care if you don't like doing it. I'm just saying do it.
Amen.
Whether you like it or whether you don't. And if you don't like it, then go to God and ask Him to change your heart, which is what we're going to speak about as in our next presentation. And I want us to know this one thing. At this encampment, Friday, Sabbath, if we include today, the last 2.5 days, if you have not been exercising your will according to what you know to be right, in mercy, we could let you off because you weren't educated on this. But in reality, you're under an old covenant. If you're under the old covenant, by definition, you're wicked, you're vile, you're a dog, you're of the concision, and you're a tear. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness and mercy. Lord, we ask and pray that you would be with us, that you would guide our thoughts, and also, Lord, that you would enter into our hearts and change our feelings. Please help us to understand the true nature and the true force of the will. Help us, Lord, to study your word, particularly the role and the nature and the scope of our wills. And having understood them, let us put into practice that which we study and learn. Father, you have brought each of us here for a purpose. Individually, we may not even realize why we're here, but we know you brought us here for a purpose. Lord, if we haven't been exercising our wills through our past life, for whatever reason, maybe we chose not to, maybe we didn't understand, maybe we were deceived, maybe we were in slavery to doubt, and we couldn't even believe that we could do good. Help us from this moment onward, Lord, to make this camp like heaven. Even if we don't enjoy doing it. And Father, if we don't, may each of us not grit our teeth. May we not force ourselves by practicing will worship, but rather, Lord, may we come on bended knees to you, asking you to change our hearts, making our hearts in agreement with our minds, therefore freeing our wills to practice what you want us to be like and to have pleasure in doing this. Be with us and bless us, Father, for the rest of this day. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.